Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting for Monday, August 27th. We welcome all those that are here this evening. We welcome those that are watching at home as well. We do have a quorum this evening. Alderman Forrest Owens is en route and will be here later in the evening and will join us at that particular time when he does get into chambers. This evening, the invocation will be led by Reynold Douglas. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Yonda. Please rise.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Gracious eternal God, our Father, we come this evening with thankful hearts. Thank you for the opportunity to serve this community. We thank you for the opportunity for things that you do in spite of ourselves. We ask that you would be a part of this meeting, a part of the decisions that will be made here today. We say a special prayer for those who are going through bereavements. We say a special prayer for those who are sick and afflicted. We ask that you continue to bless the men and women that serve this country, that serve this community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, the setting of the agenda. Each Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting, the board meets in executive session at 5:30 prior to the meeting, goes over the agenda in detail. At that particular meeting, a couple of items were recommended for movement. On the consent agenda, item G, professional services agreement, supplement number 3, Forest Hill Irene Road improvements, was recommended to move to the regular agenda, and that will now be item 12 on the regular agenda. Item 12 on the regular agenda, bid rejection, safe routes to school, will now flip-flop and change places with the prior item and will be G on the agenda this evening. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes. The agenda has been set for this evening. Brings us to item number 5, approval of the August 13th, 2018 minutes during executive session. There were no modifications. Are there any at this particular time? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented to the public? Move to approve. Is a motion?
Second.
Is a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
The minutes have been adopted and approved. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda, special recognition. We have 2 items this evening. First, Beautification Business Award, followed by Farmington Teacher Presidential Award winner. Both of those presentations will be handled by our Vice Mayor, Mary Ann Gibson. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask Mr. Jeff Branch to come forward. Thank you, Jeff. And Pam Beasley, our Parks and Recreation Director, if you will make the presentation. The purpose of this agenda item is to recognize the Germantown Collection, located on Poplar Avenue, as the recipient of the August Beautification Award. The Germantown Collection consists of 5,500 plus square feet of specialty retail space and features a variety of national retailers and restaurants. This mixed-use center is centrally located on the corner of Exeter and Poplar Avenue. By crafting an ideal mix of uses that include high-end retail, restaurants, entertainment, and service providers, and combining them with beautifully landscaped, architecturally pleasing, and well-maintained environments, a true gathering place is created. This retail outlet has taken their landscape a step above the typical commercial planning plan by featuring a beautiful pollinator garden. That's butterflies for those in the know. Garden plot in one of their medians. A dense display of black-eyed Susans and other native perennials provide habitat for bees, butterflies, and other beneficial insects. The property entrances are also very inviting and bursting with seasonal color. The level of landscape detail, maintenance, and care of this Germantown property demonstrates pride in their appearance and their commitment to helping the city look beautiful. The Beautification Commission expresses much appreciation for your efforts. Jeff Branch is the property manager of the Landscape Workshop Company, which provides landscaping services at this retail site. Thank you so much and congratulations.
On behalf of the board, we do appreciate your commitment to your property and your commitment to the community. A beautiful property leads to more traffic and more business, and leads to a lot of community building as well. So, you'd like to make some comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you to you and Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you for your support. I'd also like to thank the Board of Aldermen and the Beautification Commission. Ms. Gibson, I understand you're the liaison between the Beautification Commission and the board here, so greatly appreciate that. We are joined today by two members of Landscape Workshop that I work very closely with. I'd like to recognize them for a second, if I could. Blair Maynard and Robert Cavanis. If you would please stand.
Stand up, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We have worked with Landscape Workshop for a number of years, and they do a fantastic job. And so part of that Black-Eyed Susan bed was part of the 4-phase landscape plan, as you well know, that was approved, which we have completed the first 2 phases, and really excited to complete the following 2 very soon. So just want to say thank you for the support. Thank you for the recognition. We are honored to accept this award on behalf of my company, who is the management and leasing company, and the ownership as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your investment in our community. We appreciate it. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask Miss Anna Brignol to come forward. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to actually enlist our chairman of our Education Commission as well, if you'll come forward to stand with Ms. Brignol. You have received an amazing award, the Presidential Award winner. And so Anna Brignol has served as an educator for the last 12 years. She began her career at Drummond's Elementary and Southwind Elementary School, teaching 3rd through 5th grade. For the past 4 years, she has been teaching 4th grade mathematics at Farmington Elementary School. Through the use of curriculum designed to seek high standards, Anna is able to provide her students with a classroom culture that promotes student engagement and empowerment. The students feel in control of their learning and are able to gain deeper mathematical connections. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy with the National Science Foundation announced 140 individuals and organizations that were honored with presidential awards for their excellence in teaching or mentoring in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. On June 24th, Ms. Brignol was recognized in Washington, D.C. by the White House as one of 2 teachers from Tennessee, only 2, who were awarded the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teachers. During her visit to the nation's capital, Anna received a presidential citation at an awards ceremony and participated in discussions on STEM and STEM education priorities led by those organizations that funded the award. She will also receive a $10,000 award from NSF on behalf of the White House. Well done, you. Nominees completed a rigorous application process that requires them to demonstrate their excellence in content knowledge and ability to adapt to a broad range of learners and teaching environments. A panel of distinguished mathematicians, scientists, and educators at the state and national levels assess the applications before recommending nominees to OSTP. Teachers are selected based on their distinction in the classroom and dedication to improving STEM education. So we, Ms. Brignol, would simply like to give our congratulations to you and our heartfelt thanks for continuing the wonderful tradition of excellence in education and focused on our students. Thank you so much.
Well, we join in the celebration. I'm going to ask mayoral privilege for a moment. Reynold, I need you to do that picture a second time. Can you bring your family up as well? Because I have a feeling that you're as successful as you are because you have the support. You have the support at home, and so I think everyone would probably like to enjoy this with you as well.
Come from a long line of teachers. And I think
Excellent.
That's a part of why I'm standing right here.
And so do I. We appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you.
And we will share with you that if you're preparing a lesson plan or maybe dinner, you may go if you'd like, or you can stay for about another hour and a half if you'd like. But well, you're welcome. Thanks for the work you do for us. That brings us to item 7 on the agenda this evening, Alderman Liaison Reports. We move from position 1 through 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Mayor, I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that we're going to talk about the Neighborhood Summit. That is where residents are encouraged to attend the free Neighborhood Summit presented by the Neighborhood Preservation Commission. This year's summit will take place on Tuesday, October 23rd from 5:30 till 8 p.m. at the Great Hall. That's my report, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
Do not have a report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Yonda.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a report.
Very good.
The Personnel Advisory Commission met on August the 22nd. The primary focus of this meeting was to review the health plan, which provides medical, pharmacy, dental, and vision coverage for the eligible employees, dependents, and retirees. The Commission's recommendations in planning for the calendar year 2019 have been forwarded to the administration for consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And just quickly from the Office of Mayor, just a couple of quick items. I would like to recognize and congratulate Chief Selberg, who just completed his last meeting this month as president of his statewide association of fire chiefs. So we appreciate your commitment to your profession and representing us throughout the state. Round of applause for Chief. Staying in the public safety realm, I'd like to also recognize Deputy Chief Beeman and Captain Nick Godwin for providing multiple active shooter trainings to GMSD and to many houses of worship in the area and other schools, notably Christian Brothers as well, bringing that safety to the entire region. So, Chief, if you could, both chiefs, if you could share that with your respective bodies, that would be great. That concludes Alderman Liaison reports and takes us to item 8 on the agenda this evening, citizens to be heard. We have a few citizens that have filled out forms. Before those come forward, I'll go ahead and read the guidelines and disclaimer from Citizens to be Heard. Citizens to be Heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. The presiding board chair shall have sole authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to board rules. And we know no one will do that. First on the order is Mr. Jim Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, if you could come forward to either podium, or I guess we only have one this evening, to the podium, and state your name and address for the public record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jim Jacobs, 7684 Apple Valley Road, 38138. And I am the treasurer of the Neshoba North Neighborhood Association, and I wanted to invite all of the, on behalf of the NNNA, invite all of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the candidates for positions in the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to attend the NNNA Fall Cookout, which will be on October 20th, Saturday, October 20th at 4 p.m. at the corner of Appahan and Panoa Roads. And we appreciate your service, and we would like to see you there and get some personal chit-chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. We appreciate your comments and your invitation. Takes us to our next speaker this evening, John Howell. Mr. Howell, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. My name is John Howell. I live at 7990 Cross Ridge Drive, 38138. I have a concern about what seems to me to be an excessive fee to go before a zoning commission. In the beginning of this year, I came up to City Hall to try to find out what I needed to do to put another driveway on my property. One of the engineers was kind enough to come to the property with me, look it over, said, you know, you got no issues here, and the purpose of the driveway is for a motorhome. He said, you're going to have to put it behind a fence, or if your neighbors don't have a problem with it and they assign, you can do it without a fence. So I come back months later to get this thing going. Well, one other thing, the engineer said that here's a list of cement folks, and we expect you to use one of those. Or that's the way I took it anyway. I was wrong, obviously, but I asked my wife, who is a legal secretary or senior legal secretary for Nationwide, to find out if that's true or false, and it's not. I misunderstood what he said. But anyway, so I get my contractor, and he comes up and gets his permit, but he's told I can't have a second driveway on a corner lot, which was surprise, surprise, and that I had to come up and go before a zoning board and pay $450 on the front end before I ever got in front of anybody. And to me, that seems excessive. And part of the stipulations of this no driveway deal was the concern about congesting traffic or turning around in the middle of a street or whatever in your neighborhood. Well, you folks have created a traffic nightmare with Germantown United Methodist Church and their crosswalk in the middle of the block. So I don't understand that logic. And that's the concern I have. You know, I can understand it. Well, one other thing, your community development guy said that the money was to be used to pay the expense of the people to determine whether or not the driveway was feasible. Well, that seems like that they're city employees anyway. So that I don't understand that. You know, if it was going to the policeman and fireman's retirement fund, I may not have a problem with it. But the way he presented it, it just flies all over me. Anyway, I would appreciate it if you folks would take a look at this and hopefully find something that's more reasonable for people to pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Appreciate your comments this evening. Next on the agenda is Jay Brooks. Mr. Brooks, if you can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Evening. Jay Brooks, 8723 Windrush. I'm here as part of the Triangle family. I'm sure that's no surprise to any of you. We've had many conversations. But there seems to be some disinformation that as far as tax base goes, many of the residents think that a development on the Triangle of office, retail, commercial, doctor's offices and whatnot would devalue their property when I know there's real estate agents on the board, and I think they would, if allowed to answer, would say that most of the properties, if not all the properties, would increase in value. In addition to that, going back through several years of history and articles There's many quotes from all of you people on the board regarding smart growth and how good it would be for the city in terms of tax base, and that the city is landlocked and we have to find a way to develop to the maximum potential of the city. Residential is not the maximum potential. And I got to believe that everybody would agree with that. The city is running out of space to develop it makes no sense to say that since we've got a Thornwood, then we don't need any more. The city is 85% plus residential, and you have no other space that you can grow the city's tax base on a commercial basis. Your responsibility to the city is a fiduciary responsibility. And to take the approach that, well, residential is the best fiduciary response to our tax base is ridiculous. And I understand the politics that are going on. I have heard from one of the aldermen that this is bigger than Germantown. Well, she's correct that this is politics. This is all about the election.
15 seconds.
And, you know, we said the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of this thing, this meeting. Justice for all is the end. Where is our justice? This has been emotionally wrecking the families for what you've put us through.
Please begin to conclude your comments, sir.
And I would hope that at some point this board comes to some sense of reasoning that this should not fall on any family in this city. This is unjust.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. We appreciate your comments. Next speaker is Missy Brooks. If you could come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes as well.
Good evening. My name is Missy Brooks. I reside at 8723 Windrush in Memphis. I and my sister own the Owen tract of the Cordova Triangle. This year we have become aware of a small vocal group that has been very active on their Facebook platform. I say small compared to the 40,000 residents of Germantown. They started and have kept alive the zoning conflict and painted smart growth as undesirable for unknown reasons. As an alderman said before proposing this rezoning, the Smart Growth Steering Committee was made up of the best and brightest who came together to envision what could be in Germantown. These professional planners and city leaders proposed the Smart Growth zoning in 2007. In 2015, our family paid $1.5 million at our father's death based on that zoning. We have an affidavit document of the estate tax to confirm this. When we became aware of the neighbors' opposition to multifamily housing and the moratorium, we dissolved the contract with the developer who was planning a high-end multifamily community on the back portion of our land. He was also planning a wide buffer of woods and nature trail. Since then, we have even offered to sign a deed restriction that would prevent apartments from ever being built there. Why would the board choose another residential development that would widen Cordova Road, destroy all of the trees, replace a CBD with a quarter-mile-long brick wall needed to shield backyards from their busy 7-lane thoroughfare? Our family has discussed with several aldermen and neighborhood associations and with 2 landscape architects our vision of a beautiful conservation area Saving Healthy Trees with the Walking Trail Park. We are often in Birmingham and have come to love the Mountain Brook area, pocket villages, picturing something similar on our land. A restaurant on the corner of Germantown Road where neighbors could enjoy dinner before a G-PAC concert, a coffee shop, town square, a fountain, to make up for the city's shortage, office space to attract businesses. This would all benefit the city economically while preserving natural habitats and providing a sense of place for people to gather with friends and neighbors. There's so much potential for a beautiful, carefully planned destination that Germantown could be proud of that would also increase surrounding property values. Please resist the pressure of a few for this extreme downzoning. Please give a master developer time to plan the Owen Tract in order to benefit the city as a whole. And please stop this emotional and divisive process for the sake of your town. Thank you.
That concludes all of the speakers for citizens to be heard this evening. We appreciate those citizens coming forward and speaking before the board. It brings us to the consent agenda this evening. As mentioned, when the agenda was set, there are a couple of items that moved from the consent agenda and the regular agenda. I'll read through those items quickly. Item 9A, competitive seal proposal authorization, Germantown Athletic Club, branding development and design. Item B, contract Tennessee Department of Agriculture, TAEP, community tree planting project grant. Item C, donation, Germantown Education Foundation, Friends of the Foundation, fourth quarter. Item D, donations, Germantown Community Library. Item E, PEG disbursement to GMSD for the fourth quarter. Item F, professional services agreement, Chloe's House at Oak Lawn Garden. Item G, which was item 12 on the agenda, bid rejection, safe routes to school. Item H, professional services, supplement number 5, Germantown Athletic Club, Phase 4, plans update and bid phase. Item I, Resolution 18R19, 2018-19 TML Risk Management Pool, grant programs participation. Item J, wireless transmission facility modifications located at 1926 South Germantown Road at the police station. Item K, wireless transmission facility modification located at 2716 Cross Country at the Cloys Soccer Fields. That concludes the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as modified? It's a motion by Alderman Yonda, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
And you did call the roll for Alderman Owens. Let the record state that Alderman Owens is here, present and accounted for, and participating in the meeting this evening. Brings us to item 10 on the agenda, appointment Parks and Recreation Commission. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The board is asked this evening to approve the appointment of Ms. Brittany Palagera, and I apologize if Brittany is here this evening and I butchered her last name, but she's requested to serve the unexpired term, remaining 3-year term, which expires in December 31st, 2019 on the Parks and Recreation Commission. As the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is aware, the members who are appointed to the Parks and Recreation Commission are appointed on staggered terms, so this would fill that unexpired term for that period of time. A copy of Brittany's application is attached to your agenda sheet, along with a bio that she included as well regarding her professional and other experience.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff? Is there a motion to approve the appointment of Ms. Brittany Pellegra to serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission with a term ending December 31st, 2019?
Move to approve.
Second.
So motion and second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
The appointment has been made and approved. Excuse me. Item 11 on the agenda, declaration of vacancy, Germantown Board of Education, position 3. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the board. When the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved the various ordinances that put in place the Germantown Municipal School Board and the Board of Education, the board also established the creation of the school board. And at the time they did that, as a condition, we covered that area where a vacancy may occur on the school board and whose responsibility it is to fill that vacancy. Well, that responsibility, based upon Article 9, Section 2-411 of the Municipal School Board Private Act Charter, clearly states that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is the body responsible for filling that vacancy. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen went through a very similar process 2 years ago with the appointment of Ms. Betsy Landers to fill an unexpired term there. So before you this evening is the action to declare a vacancy in the Board of Education position number 3. Last Monday, the Germantown Board of Education met and they accepted the vacancy submitted by Ms. Suzanne Jones for that position. It's now our turn. I did hear from Ms. Landers shortly after that the school board did take that action, and it's now in the hands of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. First step to declare the vacancy. Included in the discussion section is a calendar and outline that the administration has put together to fill this vacancy. And it begins this evening. Tomorrow, the city attorney's office will notify the election commission that a vacancy does exist. The election commission will make a determination at that time or soon thereafter whether or not there is sufficient time for someone to qualify to run for this position for the November 2018 general election or the general election in 2020. We will wait to hear back from the election commission regarding the timing of that. But regardless, this body is asked to declare the vacancy and then put in place the process to select and appoint an individual to serve until that time.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Is there a motion to declare that a vacancy on the Germantown Board of Education in position 3, per the provisions of Article 9, Section 2-411 of the City Charter, effective August 27th, 2018?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
I do have a few
Alderman?
questions, Mayor. Patrick, where can the applicants find applications, and where do applicants submit their completed applications in the event that we do go forward and vote to replace Ms. Jones or fill the vacancy?
There'll be information that will leave City Hall tomorrow, pending action by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen this evening, about the entire process, where applications can be picked up, where applications need to be submitted. We will post this in as many places as we can. We have representatives from the press here this evening. They will help us, I'm sure, getting the word out. It's the same process we did back in 2016 when Ms. Landers was appointed, and we had quite a few applications to fill this position. But that, we will get the word out as best we can. The applications will go to will be submitted to our Executive Secretary, Ms. Leslie Acera, who will compile those. As we receive them, we can provide them to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as they come in. We don't have to wait until September 12th or that date. If you look at the calendar, then we also have an opportunity for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on the 17th to determine the finalist, and then we will conduct interviews the evening of September 19th and 20th. But getting the word out, we will push that word out in the community to the best of our ability, and there is a place and an application that will be provided for anyone who's interested in filling this position.
Does it have to be along this timeline, or can we extend the period to receive applications?
That is up to this body. This is the process that the administration put together, and it mirrors exactly the process and the timeline that was put in place when Chairman Landers was selected to serve that vacancy. These dates line up almost identical because it was about the same time 2 years ago when former school board member Mark DeLay resigned his position. So this is right on track with what this body did 2 years ago.
Mayor, one thing I'd like to suggest is if we are going to move forward with the BMA voting on this replacement. If there is a way for us to actually get Suzanne Jones involved as an advisor to the board so that she can offer some input into the qualifications and what she would like to see for her replacement, I think that would be wise. Ms. Jones, I think, got the largest majority of anyone in the 2016 election. There are a lot of voters out there that support her message, and I think we as aldermen would do well to get her involved, and I think it would instill confidence in her supporters if she acted in some type of advisory capacity to us. So I would appreciate that. What would be the steps for getting Ms. Jones involved? I talked to her. She is agreeable to doing that if we ask her to do it.
Mayor, if I could answer that. Two things. Ms. Jones is no longer a resident of the city of Germantown, number one. And secondly, if you look at that article, that section, there is one body and one body only that is to review, make recommendations, make the decisions regarding the selection of the school board vacancy. It's not anyone from the outside. You would think it might be a member of the existing school board, but no, that's not the case either. It is clearly the Board of Mayor and Aldermen who needs to deliberate, who needs to decide on the qualifications based upon what we've identified here and in the application, and that body only.
Well, would there be anything, though, that would prohibit us from inviting Ms. Jones in to speak and give her opinion about the applicants that apply for the position?
Again, the charter, the code, the ordinance identifies only the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make that decision, to do that deliberation, and to make that final recommendation.
And there is the belief among the residents that the time has passed for us to have an election to replace her, but what I'm hearing tonight is that that may not be true, that the election commission could very well still determine that there is enough time for someone to apply for the position and the election be held to fill the vacancy in November 2018. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And so, the election commission, their attorneys, their process is the election commission's process, and we respect that. So that's why tomorrow between Mr. McCarroll and Mr. Harris and myself, we will notify the election commission, and they will advise us, is there sufficient time for somebody to run for the office? The position I think this body finds itself in is that I believe the final date of the resignation was the end of July. The official cutoff date for the general election in 18 was August 13th. So not a lot of play there, not a lot of time to make any type of decision. But however, we will notify the election commission and let them come back to us and say yay or nay, because it says at the next general election, and that next general election could either be 18 or it could be 20.
So the August 13th date, though, doesn't necessarily apply to this vacancy?
I cannot speak to that directly. That's why we're going to notify the election commission and let them make that call.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? It's been moved and properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barziza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Motion is approved, and we will start our work tomorrow. As mentioned earlier, item 12 on the traditional agenda has been moved to consent. So we moved to item 13 on the agenda. Well, I'm sorry, we flopped those two. That's correct. So we'll move G, which, let me find my tab quickly. There'll be professional services agreement, supplement number 3, Forest Hill Irene Road improvements. Mr. Lawton?
Mayor, I'll make that presentation, and if there's any detailed questions about the scope of work, Mr. Gwaltney is here to assist. One of the things we've learned from the state of Tennessee in terms of, I would call it best practice, is when the state is doing a project, not only do they have the design firm involved in doing the work, but they also will then, when a construction contract is let, bring in what's called a construction inspection and engineering firm to also oversee that work. And typically it's the same engineering firm that helped prepare the plans and specifications. So before you this evening, under the background section, you can see all the various steps the city has taken, the the administration, engineering department, in bringing these work to be done on Forest Hill to this body in the various supplemental contracts. At the last board meeting, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen did approve a construction contract with ACA Enterprises, doing business as Scott Contractors, to perform this work. A very capable firm. This was the group that did the work on Wolf River Extension, and it was a $25 million project. This is not near that. However, we feel very comfortable in the bids that were received and the work to be done. We will have our own project construction inspector on the project. It'll be a City of Germantown employee, a well-seasoned employee, to make sure that everything that's in the specifications is done according to the plans and specifications. But we also would like to have, and are requesting, and it was included in this year's budget, as my friend Mr. Harris likes to say, belts and suspenders, an additional supplemental contract with the firm who did the design work, Gresham Smith, to have additional engineering services on the site, making sure that their design and specifications, what they included in the bid plans and specifications, are actually carried out to the letter of the law and to the letter of the specifications, along with our own team. Again, $45,000 was identified in this year's budget for that work, and we are recommending that extension of that professional services contract to include this additional work.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. I would only
Mayor,
add.
if I could add one other thing, I'm sorry, I apologize, sir. There's a timing element with this too. We want to make sure that this project is done, particularly the northern portion of the project, to coincide with the opening of the new elementary school, Forest Hill Elementary School, in August of 2018. So time is of the essence. You know, there'll be issues that come up, and we want to have the best folks on site, making sure that there aren't any delays in the construction and completion of this project.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to point out. I appreciate that. Is there a motion to approve supplement number 3 in the amount of $45,000, increasing the existing Forest Hill Irene Road improvements project professional services agreement with Grisham Smith and Partners, GSP, from $401,555 to $446,555? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Briefly,
Alderman?
Mr. Long, what exactly prompted the increase? If this is something we discussed during the budget, you have to forgive me, I've just forgotten it. So what exactly created the need for the $45,000 supplement?
Thank you, Tim.
What precipitated it is knowing the amount of effort that's going to be needed in the field to keep this project moving. As Mr. Lawton mentioned, our chief construction inspector is assigned to that project. Keeping in mind it's a mile in length, there's an 18-month timeline for this project. If we have a single inspector assigned to several large projects in town, this being one of them, we need supplemental efforts from the design firm to help us keep this project on schedule.
I guess in the back of my mind, I'm just questioning why this wasn't foreseeable on the front end while we keep getting the supplementals once we've already approved these projects. And I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong, but I haven't made any secrets about the fact that the supplementals and change orders that we get on these things are a concern.
Understood.
This was included in the budget, in the FY19 budget, as we were developing a capital improvements plan way back in December and January of 17 and 18. There was no question that we were going to need additional dollars for this construction, engineering, and inspection services. So the supplement was identified early on in the budget process and in the CIP that this body adopted, and we identified the $45,000 because we knew we would need this additional work. This wasn't something that came along after the contract was awarded or after the budget was awarded, but clearly identified in the early phases of the budget.
I guess just briefly, what is the additional work that's going to be taking place that we didn't contemplate until we got into the budget?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. The additional work was identified.
In the budget.
In the budget,
Okay.
correct. And it's called a supplement, which means it makes it appear as if this wasn't foreseen. I mean, if we had done this as a brand-new contract, which we could have done in this new fiscal year, perhaps that would have taken away the questioning of assuming it's additional work that wasn't foreseen, but this was foreseen.
No, it's just, we had $401,000 that was budgeted for the project. Now we're increasing it by $45,000. And, I mean, I hear you say that we did it, so.
It was stated two different times, we had the entire amount budgeted. It's just good conservative practice of whether you do it on the front end or you wait to see whether that you can rely on the original design work. Staff made the decision that this project is too important to move forward to coincide with the opening of school, not to chance it. And so that's our decision, not to chance it, make sure our children are getting to school safely.
So maybe that's the answer, is that we have the school that's getting ready to come online, so we need to rush this through, so to speak, and so we're having to hire additional people to get this job done on time. Is that a good way of summarizing?
That's a good way to summarize it.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Yonda.
But the budget for that, this covers, right? This is not addition to our budget. This is within our budget.
This is within the budget.
Okay.
Correct.
So make sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? It's been properly moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza? Yes. Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Brings us to item 13 on the agenda, reimbursement, payment number 1, GMSD, school security improvements. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. During the budget process, again, as we were developing a capital improvements budget for the city, working very closely with our friends at GMSD, they identified $500,000 to be used, or a request for $500,000 to be used to upgrade various security improvements and enhancements at the 5 schools in our district. These improvements included the addition of cameras inside and outside of the building, the improvement of cell phone coverage with the inclusion of boosters at our elementary schools. And because the dollars are appropriated in the city's budget, $500,000, the district has paid for this work, and we are now going to be reimbursing them for the work. And so the first several invoices that we received total $102,600. That is what's before you this evening, and under the discussion portion, you can see how those dollars will be used. That will leave approximately $397,000 left to do additional camera work and security improvements. In addition to that, also to complete the design work to restrict public access at Houston High School. Don't know how far they'll be able to get with that, but included in your packet is a rendering of what those additional security improvements will look like at Houston High School. And so the motion before the board this evening is to approve the reimbursement to Germantown Municipal School District in the amount of $102,600 for the security improvements, primarily improving cell phone coverage and security cameras at various schools throughout the district. We will, as we get the other invoices, and it may come in the form of 2 payments or 1 payment, come back to this body and authorize the additional payment of the $397,400.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. And I will just add to your presentation, I want to publicly thank our GPD, our chief, IT, also fire as well, Public Works, a number of different departments that really worked on making sure that this type of public safety improvements could be made to our school district. Also to acquire all the training necessary from the state level to position ourselves to be able to be ready for the grant process from the governor's plan to put public safety dollars out to our school districts. So that was a real concerted effort, and I think I mentioned IT, but I know IT, Tony Fisher, had a lot to do with that as well, so very much appreciated. Is there a motion to approve reimbursement payment number 1 in the amount of $102,600 to the Germantown Municipal School District for school security improvements?
Move to approve.
The motion by Alderman Barzizza, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Any questions or discussions? Alderman Yonda? All right. Any other questions, comments? It's been moved and properly motioned. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson? Yes. Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Motion carries. We do appreciate the support of the board in making sure our schools are safe. Item 14 on the agenda, and the next three items will all involve new commissions. Mr. Heisman?
Vice Mayor and members of the board, Ordinance 2018-7 establishes a Public Arts Commission whose purpose is to enhance the city's environment and its public spaces through the strategic placement and promotion of public art. If approved this evening, applications for this 9-member commission will be accepted beginning in October of this year, with the commission's work commencing January of 2019. GPAC Executive Director Paul Chandler and I are available for questions pertaining to the Public Arts Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Heisman. Is there a motion to approve on third and final reading Ordinance 2018-7 establishing a Public Arts Commission?
Move to approve.
Is a motion? Second. It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries. Brings us to item 15 on the agenda, Ordinance 2018-8, Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, third and final reading. Mr. Heisman.
Ordinance 2018-8 establishes a Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, which will be focused on the promotion of bicycling and walking as a viable means of transportation, on providing input regarding public bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects, and on advancing the city's overall commitment to greenways, trails, and connectivity. If approved this evening, applications for this 9-member commission will also be accepted beginning in October of this year, with the commission's work commencing in January of 2019. Parks and Recreation Director Pam Beasley and I are available for questions pertaining to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Heisman. Is there a motion to approve on third and final reading Ordinance 2018-8 establishing a Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission?
So moved.
Motion? Second. It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
We will have a Bike and Pedestrian Commission. That brings us to item 16 on the agenda, Ordinance 2018-9, Technology Commission, third and final reading.
Ordinance 2018-9 establishes a Technology Commission whose purpose is to enable the city to meet the rapid pace of technological change in society by planning and investing in information and communication technologies. The Technology Commission will replace the Telecommunications Commission in our existing municipal code. If approved this evening, applications for the 7-member commission will be accepted beginning in October, and the commission's work will commence in January of 2019. IT Director Tony Fisher and I are available for any questions related to the Technology Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Heisman. Is there a motion to approve on third and final reading Ordinance 2018-9, amending Section 2-276 through Section 2-278, and adding Section 2-279, thereby replacing the Telecommunications Commission with the Technology Commission? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
It's a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Very well. The commission will be seated in January as well. I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize and thank some folks that worked on the Boards and Commission Task Force back in the summer and fall of 2016. The Boards and Commission Task Force was a direct result of Germantown Forward 2030. Some recommendations were made to take a real deep dive into our boards and commission structure to see if there were any that need to be adjusted or modified or any additions. The city has roughly 22 boards and commissions with in excess of 200 volunteers. This will bring us to 25 boards and commissions and close to 250 volunteers that give their time and their talents to the city of Germantown. And members of that particular task force that met at the fire station out on Forest Hill for 8 or 10 evenings in the late summer and early fall of 2016 were Daniel Dent, former Mayor Sharon Goldsworthy, Matt Keithley, Julius Moody, Dan Roberts, Lori Whitney, Kevin Young, Patrick Lawton, and myself. So appreciate all the work that those individuals did to bring these three boards and commissions forward. And we will advertise those. And I do want to appreciate the work of Jason Heisman as well, because this is one of the early projects that you undertook in your role as Assistant City Administrator. So we're very excited to have three new commissions. Public art, cities that invest in public art are world-class cities. Cities that invest in technology are great cities as well. And of course, bike and pedestrian, we've been a leader in that since the 70s with bike lanes and since the 90s with the first greenway system in this entire region. So job well done by the entire community. Let's move on to item 17 on the agenda, ordinance 2018-10, rezoning of Cordova Triangle from T4 General Urban to R Single Family Residential, and an ordinance amendment to delete Cordova Triangle from the Central Business District Regulating Plan referred to in Section 23-756 and the zoning map in Section 23-824 of the Germantown Smart Code. First reading. I'm going to take a breath. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the board. As mentioned, this is the first reading for the consideration of changing the zoning of the area commonly referred to as the Cordova Triangle from T4 General Urban to R Single Family Residential. And there will also be ordinance amendments deleting the Cordova Triangle from the Central Business District Regulating Plan that's referred to in 23-756 of the Smart Code, and the zoning map that's 23-824 of the Germantown Smart Code. The city did rezone the area highlighted in 2007 as part of the Smart Growth Plan and overlaid the T4 General Urban Zoning District in the area collectively known as the Cordova Triangle. Those parcel ID numbers are in your agenda sheet. These approvals were completed by the Planning Commission in September of 2007 and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in October of 2007. The 2007 rezoning of the Central Business District was adopted and moved forward. However, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of changing that zoning back to residential from the T4R in July of 2018. Prior to the 2007 adoption of the Smart Code, this area was zoned residential, R 15,000 square foot lots. After more than a decade, there have been some starts, but no formal development applications have been filed with the city to develop any of the triangle parcels. The T4 Smart Code overlay consists of 6 homes that are located on these lots of varying sizes within the approximately 20 acres. All of them have remained single family in their land use since 2007. However, across the street, across Germantown Road, we've seen significant both public and private investment in the area, from the expansion at the Village of Germantown Retirement Community, Thornwood, Somerset, and the proposed Grove at GPAC. Thornwood, as you know, consists of just over 100,000 square feet of mixed retail, hotel, and residential on just under 17 acres. Somerset is 43 single-family homes built under the T3 Smart Code, and the expansion of the village added 33 independent living units as well as improvements to their memory care unit and assisted living units. And the proposed Grove at GPAC Amphitheater will have a large capacity and attract significant citizen engagement within that area. As a result of these public and private developments across the street from the Triangle, the proposal of changing this back has been part of a discussion for a significant amount of time. As noted in the agenda sheet, the Germantown Code 2366 permits changes in zoning district whenever the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practice justifies such action. The basis of the zone change could also include the existing zoning is unwise, unjust, and erroneous, and there was a mistake in the zoning, or that there has been a change in the neighborhood. The Tennessee courts, as noted in your agenda sheet, have also helped determine what is considered to be a change in the neighborhood, and those are in order: change of population, both in the area proposed to be rezoned and the surrounding areas, changes in the existing road patterns or traffic, including traffic volumes, and also including the development of new roadways in the vicinity. Also, the need for rezoning based upon the changes in whatever is classified as a neighborhood, which may or may not necessarily be limited to what one would think of as a relatively concise area, in which may include changes in population, development trends, the existing character of nearby property, and the changes that have occurred in the character of nearby property, and the effect of the requested change in zoning on adjoining or nearby property. As we've discussed over time, there have been changes across the street, but there have been no changes to this area of the Cordova Triangle, and the character of the neighborhoods, including Germantown Heights and the Neshoba North areas, have also stayed the same. There have been no significant changes to the character of that area, as well as the character of the road networks or those neighborhoods. So looking at the ability under 2366 to just make those changes back to residential as they were 11 years ago is the proposal that's in front of you today. This does look at how the city, according to 2030, can experience trends in assessed value of residential areas, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I will just add to your presentation the letter that's dated June 6th that I sent to the Planning Commission as the applicant and representative of the city is in your packet. That was precipitated by action last January, led by Vice Mayor Gibson, and concurred by with the board to move this zoning forward. And so I will just say that administration does support this, as well as staff and the mayor. Is there a motion to approve on first reading ordinance 2018-10, the rezoning of the Cordova Triangle from T4 General Urban to R Single Family Residential, and an ordinance amendment to delete Cordova Triangle from the Central Business District Regulating Plan referred to in Section 23-756 and the zoning map in Section 23-824 of the Germantown Smart Code, and to set the public hearing for September 24th, 2018. Is there a motion?
Approve.
Second. So motion and a second. Any discussion? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, sir. Just as far as discussion, what came from that January 8th meeting, the proposal that was made to remove the T4 overlay, which would revert the land back to its previous R residential zoning. The mayor, just for all of us, I think many of you were here, the mayor then directed staff to begin the analysis that would complete that work. I want to take just a moment to thank staff for going through that process. January was a while away. We've worked very hard along with the neighborhood leadership and the Planning Commission to move this request forward. And so over these last months, 9 months to be exact, we've met with representatives from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, their Natural Resources Division, to ensure that the city and neighbors understood the impact of what that R designation would have by removing the protected buffer on Cordova Road. We met with staff, neighbors in both Neshoba North and Germantown Heights, along with their homeowners association leadership. Don Lossing, I see you in the audience, Jim Jacobs, Victoria Bryant, Jennifer Baker. There's several others that were very much involved in the advocacy of that, and I would like to thank them for their dogged determination and passionate advocacy. I believe that's helped us get us where we are here tonight. In July, I came before the Planning Commission in support of the mayor's application to remove the T4 overlay and believe that this is the right course of action, a new old direction for the triangle to revert back to residential zoning. At that meeting, I explained there were several key factors that stood out for me in advocating for this change. But the tipping point came when the developers asked for a meeting with residents before Christmas of this past year. And it caused a lot of angst, a lot of worry, and it was for a project that ultimately never made application with the city. And I believe that angst and worry was unnecessary. In over a decade, there hasn't been a project filed with the city to develop those triangle parcels. And I believe that reverting the land back to single-family residential is the best course of action.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Yonda.
Yes, Mr. Ross. The fact that there's other development across the way, so they're being penalized since because they weren't the first ones to do across the road? Is that how we're looking at it? That's what caused the change in the property.
No, sir. Effectively, we're looking at it that in 2007, there were approximately 50,000 cars on Germantown Road. And that while we examined that area in 2007 and saw it as an opportunity, that canyon of cars, if you will, has remained there, and there's still approximately 50,000 cars that are using that roadway, and that has really limited the development interest on that site and anyone being able to move forward in an economically viable proposal in order to make application with the city. And so everything else to the east of Germantown Road has proceeded and become the anchor of the central business district on the north side. So considering the lack of changes and in development proposals on the Cordova Triangle, along with the remaining and maintaining that character of Cordova Road and the residential character of Germantown Heights and then the Neshoba North Association is what's making us consider this proposal.
The Owens family is the one that owns that triangle that we're talking about, parts of it anyway.
The Owen family has just under 14 acres
Okay.
of the just under 20.
Is that the same Owens family that owned the property at Thornwood and also the villages?
Yes, sir. That is the same Owen family.
Did they own the property that Neshoba North is in and Germantown Heights?
I'm not positive of what they owned in those neighborhoods.
Okay. So we basically have it as a T4 in 2007.
Yes,
and they've
sir.
been paying taxes, et cetera, on that level, and they paid inheritance taxes. I'm having trouble with that, if it was me, how I'd feel about it, but also as a homeowner, I'd have to worry about it also. The T4 would make it more expensive, worth more versus a residential. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. If it were developed, T4 is a mixed-use, commercial, residential opportunities, as we've discussed at many meetings. T4 does offer the most options in terms of both residential, in terms of housing types, as well as commercial. However, it is limited in nature. You can, we've talked about it before, but the limited nature allows it to only be on primary road frontages, 5,000 square feet per block face, only on the ground floor, only at corners. You've got offices that you can have on the second floor, but it does limit things within T4, so it's not just an explosion of development.
Okay. So we've had it T4 since 2007. Is this not considered spot rezoning because as soon as somebody comes forward on something, we change the zoning? Or does it just come under the categories of what you're saying the Tennessee courts have established?
We look at it at the standards that the Tennessee courts have established.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Any other questions or discussion? Alderman? Alderman Massey, did you have any?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So first, I think I need to make it clear that I support the rezoning of the Cordova Triangle and rezoning it from the T4 urban classification back to the residential. One of the questions that I have is, we're doing two things here, I think, and one is rezoning the Cordova Triangle, the other one is deleting the Cordova Triangle from the Central Business District regulating plan. So if you could, for the public, explain why both of those acts are necessary to accomplish this.
So the regulating plan defined both the use, the T4 uses, but it also outlined the landscape preservation area, which is referred to in, or which is an item of 23-756. So that landscape preservation area will be removed as part of this because it was only there as part of the rezoning and as an element of the regulating plan. 756 within the zoning code refers to the map elements of the regulating plan. So we have to modify this regulating plan to remove the triangle area from that. There is also the zoning map, 824 within the smart code that has the triangle in it as well. So we would have to cut this outline out and change this T4 to an R within that area. It's a simple procedure, but it's one because this area would not be smart coded anymore. The landscape preservation area would disappear on the Cordova Road, Germantown Road, and Neshoba Road side, and it would also change from T4 to R on the zoning map, so it would need to appear properly within 824 so that it can be recognized appropriately for any future applications on this, these 6 parcels.
So sometimes when we're having these discussions, we refer to something as a smart code overlay, and then sometime as we say that the underlying zoning remains until there's an actual approved plan. Can you explain the process that was used to apply the T4 zoning uses to the Cordova Triangle and why it's necessary to go through the process of amending the zoning to have the Cordova Triangle rezoned for residential?
Sure. In 2007, we went through this same 3-reading process. This property, along with all of the other property within the central business district.
If you don't mind, let me stop you. Go back to who the applicant was at the time that the request was made to rezone the Cordova Triangle.
The applicant, again, was the city of Germantown, rezoning the entire central business district, including the Cordova Triangle and the properties therein. So we're going through the same process to undo that. It was a rezoning. However, under Smart Code 2343, the applicability and pre-existing section, and this is all on the 4th paragraph, page 19 of the Planning Commission minutes, which are an attachment. But I discussed at the meeting that references to pre-existing structures, and it gives the opportunity to property owners who are subject to the lots and buildings that are located within the Smart Code district, and it also provides property owners the ability to comply with the provisions of the Smart Code or the provisions of the ordinance of the city that was applicable to the zoning district or the properties in effect for the subject property immediately prior to the adoption of that code, which was July 9th, 2007. So any property owner, to simplify that, any property owner within the Smart Code district has the ability to use the zoning that was on their property prior to July 9th, 2007, as well as the ability to use the Smart Code, assuming that it doesn't create any non-conforming structures. A good example of that is the use of the Smart Code to execute what will be our Trader Joe's opening next month. That is a shameless plug. I'll go ahead and put that out there. But the Smart Code was applied to a portion of that property to allow an out parcel to develop along that area, and that out parcel was integral to the redevelopment of the pre-existing old Kroger, because without the economics of that out parcel being able to parlay that in the pro forma, they would not have been able to bring forward the Trader Joe's and recruit the Container Store and the third bay that they will be filling in there. So they have the option to work within their existing or underlying portion of the code, but also the opportunity to use the smart code in an appropriate way on their property, as long as it comports with the defined vision and intent of the small area plan that's applied for that area. And that applies for the West Gateway or Forest Hill Heights or the Central Business District. Sorry for the long answer.
No, it's okay. So the underlying zoning then does still exist?
No.
No,
The
it does not.
opportunity to use the bulk regulations of the underlying zoning applies, but the zoning on the property is T4. But the smart code allows under 23-743B the opportunity for property owners to use the bulk regulations of the zoning that existed prior to July of 2007.
And the city was the applicant in 2007. It's my understanding that the mayor is the applicant today. Is there a reason that there was a different applicant changing this back to residential than the process that was used when the applicant came forward as the city in 2007 when it was changed from residential to T4?
The standards of transparency have changed since 2007, so we wanted to make sure that there was an official application from the official, the mayor of the city of Germantown, to move forward with this application.
So I guess my question would be, was the property ever legally rezoned from residential to the T4 if we didn't have a city official actually identified as the applicant in 2007?
Yes, sir. Under 2366, the city is allowed to change the zoning. We formalized it by having the mayor sign the official application this time. Again, standards of transparency, applications have changed. We just wanted to make sure that we were doing this correctly. It was done correctly in 2007 because the city under 2366 can make an application. Powers are also provided to regulate uses of property within the city's charter under 20220. So we are moving forward as our powers of the city under the rule of law granted to us by the charter and the ordinance.
Mayor, this question I have for you as the applicant. One of the things that we've heard from the owners of the Triangle and their attorney is that the Central Business District small growth overlay was applied in or around 2007 and incorporated the rezoning of Thornwood and the Cordova Triangle as part of the original smart growth plan. So we've heard that the area has changed, but when I'm hearing that, I presume that there was some type of deviation from the original Central Business District plan that was approved by you and other city officials. So the question is, did the city deviate from that Central Business District plan after it was initially presented to the public in 2007?
No.
So what is the impetus for bringing the request for the change forward? I mean, what is the change? Because I'm asking you this because the owners have already indicated that there's going to be a challenge to this, and he's already said that simply saying that it's unwise, he doesn't feel like that's just good justification. And so I'm just looking to you to explain your reason for changing your views of the Central District plan, because that's what they're saying is city officials approved this, approved the overlay for the Triangle as part of the Central Business District plan. So what is the reason for us now saying that that plan was unwise?
It's clearly stated in the letter that's in your packet to the Planning Commission and has been made part of the record of the Planning Commission and this body. And so I'm not going to read into the record. I did at the Planning Commission level. So those are the reasons why. You've reached your 10 minutes. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this particular item during the first round? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any more discussion?
I'll carry it over into the second round.
You have the floor, sir.
So I'll just tell you, Mr. Ross, the reason that I think this should be rezoned is because I agree somewhat with Alderman Yana, but on a different point. I think the area was actually spot zoned in 2007. And so for me, that is my reason for voting to have this reverted back to the residential. But I am concerned about our reasoning behind this and not coming forward and everyone being on the same page and calling it what it is, which was the spot zoning of the triangle to increase the revenue for a developer and a landowner. And I think that's justification to rezone this back to residential. And I'm still looking to the mayor's administration to respond to what the owners have said and what their attorneys have said as their response to us not rezoning this back to residential. I want to have a very clear record so that if they challenge this in court, it's clear that we had a good reason and it was justified to rezone this back to residential.
Based on our analysis from January, and I will say that I have the privilege of being able to look at this with fresh eyes, not being here in 2007. But the analysis that we did from January to July indicated that there may have been a mistake in looking at the entire area. When you look at this area, the entire central business district, the triangle itself is the one area that is across the canyon of Germantown Road. And 50,000 cars with 7 lanes of traffic makes it a challenge to develop that in isolation. And so what we're trying to do is move forward with maintaining the community character of that area and allowing that to develop. We're not taking away any development opportunities. We are just providing a different avenue for the property owners to develop it. There's still planned unit development options that are available under residential zoning that can move forward. They can request their own zone change to be R2, R3, or anything else. A good example of R3 zoning is the Laurels that is just north. That area is R3 zoning with 7,500 square foot lots, so half the size of the R residential at 15,000 square foot lots. But that's an application that these property owners have the ability to make. This is not spot zoning. This was part of a community-driven planning process, and the regulations that were applied to it were part of a comprehensive rezoning of the entire central business district. And starting in July with the Planning Commission, we went back and we looked at it and we saw that this may not have been wise at the time. And so we are looking to change this back to residential because that is the character of the neighborhoods that are on the west side of Germantown Road. So that is the justification. Let the development, creating places for people to activate and participate and walk and have other opportunities on the east side of Germantown Road, starting with the anchor of Thornwood on the north side of the central business district. And neighbors can walk over because there will be improvements to Germantown Road and the crosswalks as part of the Thornwood redevelopment and as part of creating a center of activity around the Grove at GPAC. But again, we go back to recognizing the character and context of the neighborhoods and Cordova Road and all those things that these neighborhoods find value in. And so we're moving to that value and trying to enhance that value by taking this zoning back to the residential zoning that was originally there in 2007.
Again, I think that it should be zoned residential as it was in 2007. The question that they're asking is, why was it rezoned in 2007, and why did it remain rezoned from 2007 to 2018 without us reverting back to the residential zoning? Now, I hear what you're saying, that it was unwise, and I agree with you. What I'm looking for is for you to tell me, you or the mayor, either one, the mayor was the applicant, so whoever wants to answer the question, I'll accept the answer from. I'm just looking for someone to go on record saying that here's what changed and here's why.
11 years of inactivity is what changed. There's been discussions, however, there's not been any formal application. When if you go across the street, there's been over $150, $175 million of public and private funds invested
let me
into
stop
that.
you. Wasn't that part of the central business plan?
Correct. And so we're both Monday morning quarterbacks here. I think that what I'm trying to say to you is that a different board in 2007 approved to put it in. This board asked, as city, under their powers under 2366, asked the Economic and Community Development to look at taking the zoning to residential and removing the SMART code. So that is what we've done. 2 different boards, 11 years of time has passed. It's the board under 2366, the city, a citizen, or any property owner can make application. I can't make that application. This board directed us to look at it, and then the mayor, as the chief officer for this board, made the application. And those are the facts as we understand them tonight, standing in front of you at first reading.
You still have the floor, sir. Do you continue or want to continue, or do you want to conclude your comments?
Sure. I guess one other question I would have is that it's also been brought up. By the way, these are all issues that the owners of the Triangle have raised, not me. I'm just trying to get clarification tonight. Has there been a change in the traffic patterns since the original study was done for the Central Business District sometime after 2007?
I think that the traffic has ebbed and flowed, but it's still functioning at approximately 50,000 cars per day on Germantown Road. However, there will be more trips generated to Thornwood in time. There will be more trips generated to GPAC in time. That's all accounted for with the infrastructure that we have and the improvements that we are making within the Germantown Road corridor. That being said, you can go back and you can see the Central Business District Smart Growth Plan that's on the city's website, and you can look at the pages in there, and it talks about 50,000 cars a day on Germantown Road. Again, Monday morning quarterback here, that is a Grand Canyon, Evel Knievel level jump to get from the west side of Germantown Road to the east side of Germantown Road, where the activity and the investment has started to anchor the Central Business District. So going back and looking at that and examining it with a fresh set of eyes, we've seen that as an unwise decision of those that came before us. And so that's why, working with the mayor and this board, we've brought forward this application to the Planning Commission and now to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Mayor, I agree it was unwise. I foresee that there will be other neighborhoods, such as those in Forest Hill Heights, that are going to make the same argument to have those properties removed from the smart growth overlay because they are no more walkable than the Cordova Triangle, and they're well outside the Central Business District. And going forward, I would simply ask that we take that into consideration and possibly start looking at removing the smart growth overlays from some of those properties in Forest Hill Heights that would affect those neighborhoods?
Alderman, I appreciate your viewpoint on that, but this board voted just 2 years ago on that, and I don't think that 11 years has passed. And I believe that the zoning prior to the smart code that was applied to that was also office. So we're talking apples and oranges here, and we're really trying to, again, create activity centers, create places for people to come, to work, to live, to play, to be a part of our community and engage with our community. That's happening in different ways, but what we're doing tonight is considering the taking of the zoning from T4 back to R. So we have to look at these as at the granular level and consider them on an individual basis. But you have to look at the facts of those different areas in the other zoning. It's not all just we rezoned residential, because that's simply not true.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Alderman Owens?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say I am sympathetic to the family, the ownership of the folks in this triangle. I understand their plight, but I don't think I can overlook the fact that after much discussion and a good bit of work in which we tried to come together and create some, I guess, agreement between the neighbors, Neshoba North and Germantown Heights, on what could be the proper residential buffer, or what am I trying to say? Conservation easement, thank you.
Preservation area.
Yes, thank you. But nonetheless, I do think, based on these discussions, and we couldn't find the agreement, that the decision that we made back in 2007, it was unwise, and I think it should be revised. I think that we have, as you've stated very well, Cameron and Vice Mayor, there have been no developments on this property for a decade, 10 years. Germantown Road does create a natural barrier, as you put it. What did you say, canyon? I like that. To the residential from the north and the mixed uses to the south. And so, I think some of the Planning Commission members, if you've read your minutes, had some good reasoning as well. And so I'll be voting in favor of rezoning this to residential.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Point of information, Mayor.
Sure.
Could we incorporate that conservation area back into the Cordova Triangle after we've rezoned it to the residential, if that's the decision of the board? And why haven't we done that?
The point of information is more about the guidelines of the rules of the meeting.
That's a point of inquiry, Mayor. This is a point of information that pertains to the issue at hand.
We have 2 more readings, and that comment is well received. We can look at that. Now, that's between a civil or a private relationship between current landowners and a future landowner. So we can investigate or research that. Yes.
To address that, I know, Cameron, in our discussions with the neighborhood, we talked at length about that conservation preservation area. It was one of the things that was discussed that night, January 8th. My concern of an unintended consequence was the removal of that and what that canopy, whether it would remain or not. Can you speak to what Alderman Massey's question was?
Sure. So bulk regulations apply simply. There would be setbacks that are required. The subdivision regulations, Chapter 17 of the ordinance, requires for improvements to be made, which includes curb and gutter, sidewalks, sewer, water, roads, other infrastructure that create subdivisions. So having that, as the mayor alluded to, is a landowner agreement. Ms. Brooks alluded to it in her comments, that they proposed that as a deed restriction to have that area preserved. But that was met with not much of a response. Again, we'll have more opportunities to talk about this, and we're happy to research that. But in terms of the city being able to apply that to the simple zoning district to the simple R zoning regulations, that's going to be another change to the zoning code that would have to put forward something like that, which would have to go through the similar 3-reading process to make a text amendment to the zoning code for something like that to be created.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I think that speaks to at least the meeting that I attended with the leadership of both neighborhoods as far as not being able to come to an agreement with how to proceed on that. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes, to move it to the public.
Very well, and that does move, the item is approved, and it does move to second reading and public hearing. And and that is September 24th, 2018, and will be published. We've reached the conclusion of our meeting this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you for being here.